But before we open up with questions, I'd just like to tell a quick story. Back in 1957, Jackie and I were freshmen at Bowling Green State University. And as freshmen, one of the great college coaches, his name was Nhat Perry. He's a Hall of Famer. He was our college coach there. In our second year there as a sophomore, he held a class. It was Football 101. And there were 35 guys in the class at the time, all purporting to be coaches. That's what they wanted to do, high school coaches and possibly college coaches. And on the first day of the class, Nhat stood up and he said, "How many of you here want to be coaches?" And of course, 35 hands went up. And he said, "Well, to start the class, I'm going to tell you the 3 things that are going to be necessary for you to be a coach. Number 3, you had to have a love and passion for the game of football. Number 2, you needed to outwork the people that you were coaching against." And he said, "The reason I say that, I've been around you for about a year, and there's not many of you here that are going to outsmart anybody. So you better be prepared to outwork them." And he said, number 1 on the list, if you want to be a coach someday, a high school coach or a junior high school coach, number 1, marry wisely. And I guarantee the only real advice that I know that I listened and followed that great coach, Nhat Perry, was that marry wisely part. Jackie Harbaugh, she is the foundation of this Harbaugh family. She's the rock of our family. She's the one that moved us 17 times in a 43-year coaching career. She sold houses at every stop. She bought houses at every stop. She took them into school and out of school. She went to school when things didn't go well. But this is my hero right here, Jackie Sapiti Harbaugh. And one other thing we like to say, you're going to ask us how we feel on this historic event. Jackie, who has it better than us? Nobody.
I didn't hear you. Try it again, Jack.
So we'll try to get him to open up a little bit.
Jackie was not pleased. Jackie's not pleased with the response of this group. So we're going to try it one more time. Go ahead, Jackie, lead us.
Who has it better than us?
Nobody. There we go. That's better.
You don't know how unbelievable that is to get the reporters to do anything. We'll start over here.
Yeah, I asked both your sons when the last time they watched a Super Bowl together was, and they couldn't remember. And I asked them if there was like the Super Bowl was a party occasion, the Harbaugh house, and they said that was usually a recruiting weekend at Michigan. And their memory was that they would go over to the campus. Do you know when the last time they would have watched the Super Bowl together? And was the Super Bowl a big occasion at the Harbaugh house?
I would say every sporting event, every big sporting event was a big occasion at our house. I can remember back when Jim, we were watching the Boston Bruins playing a hockey game way back when Bobby Orr had the great shot as he flew across the net and knocked it in. And John, to this day, still holds us responsible because he was on a refreshment run. He was about halfway up the steps when Orr knocked that puck into the goal, and he has never forgiven us for not allowing to watch that live. They had no replays in those days, so he was at a tremendous. I don't know if he ever did see the shot. Jackie?
No, not really, because I don't think then, way back in the 70s, it really wasn't as big an event as it is today. So we kind of took every day as it came. And
No.
Coach, was there a time when they were very young? It's 3 parts, but it's simple. Was there a time when they were very young when there was a lot of football talk at the dinner table? 2, did they see you as young kids breaking down films like Belichick and his dad? And 3, when did they understand what you do?
First, again, I have to point to Jackie. There weren't many times in coaching. Left a lot of times before the sun went up. You came home after the sun was down, and Jackie has a great philosophy, and that is that she wanted her children to know what their father did. She wanted them to understand who he was and what he did. And I can remember when they could just barely walk, John and Jim, that she would bring them out to the practice field. and we'd be practicing, and they'd be running and doing all the things that little kids had eventually piled up dummies, and they were jumping at dummies. Then they learned they could throw the ball around. Then they learned they could get into the locker room and meet the players and do those kinds of things. We would invite our players at Iowa and Michigan when they were growing up to come to the house on Thursday. That was our day off when we didn't work at night. Jackie would cook a great meal for them, and then pretty soon they're wrestling on the floor and doing all those kinds of things. So Jackie always involved our children in the job that we were involved with.
Thank you, sir.
Jack, do you see your coaching style in your sons, and do they get their fierce competitiveness from you?
And again, I really believe that they're both who they are. I don't think you have to watch very long. You don't have to really be a psychologist or anyone like, just to watch and see who they are. And the beauty of it, they allow themselves to be who they are. And I think Jackie and I are most proud of that.
And Jackie, I asked John if he ever picked on Jim, and he said he never teased his younger brother. Can you confirm that?
Yes, I can.
Never teased?
Well, I think that brothers both do this, don't they? And so do sisters. So everyone out there who has a brother or a sister, you all have had your little ins and outs with one another. So that's not unusual.
Yes, I was just wondering, Josine Anderson from ESPN, I was just wondering how much do your sons consult with you on a decision like when they were switching to Kaepernick or when there was a switch to Jim Caldwell? How much do they talk to you about that, and did any aspect of that decision give you pause or surprise you?
The story, and it's been told, is on draft day in 2011, after the first day, the first round of drafts was over, Jim called on his way home, and he said, "Dad, what did you think of the draft?" And we didn't have much to talk about as it relates to the draft, but he had not expressed to me who they were thinking about drafting at the quarterback position. So I said, "Jim, tomorrow in the second round, surely you're going to draft a quarterback. Which one is it going to be?" And it was dead silence. In fact, I could hear his voice. And finally he said, "Are you talking to anybody?" I said, "No, I swear I'm not talking to anyone." He said, "Dad, you got to tell me. You're not even going to tell Jackie. You won't tell Mom who we're thinking about drafting tomorrow." I said, "Jim, just tell me who it is. I promise you, I won't say anything to anyone." He said, we're drafting Colin Kaepernick." And he said, do I not only think that he's the best quarterback in the draft, I think that he's the best football player in the draft, and we're going with Colin Kaepernick." And I thought to myself, Jim, wise decision.
And lastly, just to follow up on that, I wanted to ask you, right now are the two of you, Mr. and Mrs. Harbaugh, are you having the time of your life, and where does this Super Bowl compare to, how do you rank it amongst all of your family experiences, whether it be weddings, grandchildren? How does this particular experience rank amongst all the Harbaugh moments in your family?
Well, I would honestly have to say that the birth of our own children and then the birth of our grandchildren are the most important to me. And this is like frosting on the cake for our whole family, our extended family, which includes a lot of relatives who are coming for our extended football families at all the universities where we have been and Jack has coached football teams. Because, and I might take this time, if I may, to thank all those friends and family and all those ex-football players who have called us to congratulate John and Jim. And they're so excited for this because they feel that they're part of this too. And it's just fun hearing from them and sharing this moment with them. Does that answer your question?
Just kind of along with that is all those millions and millions of people out there that are parents. This is just a fantastic, fantastic experience, and really no one has it better than us. But when you're in the process of going through parenting, the day that they made the junior high school football team, they came home and said, "Dad and Mom, I made our junior high school team." You have that feeling of just so thrilled for your children. They go to high school and they make the high school team. And then they are lucky enough to get a college scholarship. And then every one of those stops along that tremendous journey, the thrill that you feel. I know this is such a big stage, but in parenting, it's those don't rank any different. Those stops, they don't rank any differently than this. It's just the thrilling part of being a parent.
All right, right back here. With the mic. Just,
Mr. and Mrs. Harbaugh, obviously this has been a great experience. Do you have a little bit of apprehension, however, about after the game?
That's, for me, I jump in there. It's the one thing that I do think about is after the game. There's going to be one winner, and there's going to be one that's going to be totally disappointed. And my thoughts go to that one that will not experience the thrill of victory, and that's where our thoughts will be. And we had a little bit of a dry run on this last year in Thanksgiving, and we watched the game, and I know this has been reported before. We watched the game in an office in the stadium, in Ravens Stadium, and they were so kind to give us that privacy. And during the 3 hours and 15 minutes, I want you to know this lady was comatose. I mean, there was no expression. Her face was totally lifeless, and her eyes were glazed over watching the game. And then the game was over. You just dropped your head. And we went down on an elevator and opened the door to the Raven locker room. I mean, the excitement of victory. We've all experienced that excitement of victory. Guys jumping up and down and smile on John's face. And the coaches, they were just ecstatic and that thrill of victory. I'm telling you, there's nothing like victory, the thrill of victory. And then you realize you weren't needed here. I mean, they had so much going on for them. So you walked across the hall, and you went into the 49ers locker room, and you walked, and you saw the players, walking about, and that look in their eyes, of that look of not being successful and coming up short. Opened up a couple doors and finally saw Jim all by himself in his room, just a table and a chair, still in his coaching outfit, and his head down in his hands, and you looked into his eyes, and you realized that this is where you were needed as a parent. Now, every single parent can identify with that thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And on Sunday night, we're going to experience both of those great emotions, and our thoughts will be with the one that comes up a little short.